Well, we are on the chapter 3, starting today, item 35. I like to remind everyone that this is not a lecture, this is a study, this is a conversation about the topics we will be reading here. So please feel free to participate, make comments, even share your experience if you have to. 35. For those who desire to acquire this preliminary understanding through our works, we recommended the following order. Remembering here that Kardec will give us now, in his conception, the best way to get acquainted to the level of information that's in the Spiritism. Number 1, what is the Spiritism? This booklet of only 100 pages or so presents a summary of the principles of the Spiritist doctrine, a general overview that enables one to see the whole in the condensed picture. If only a few words, one can ascertain its objective and judge its scope. Furthermore, it presents the principal questions or objections that newcomers are usually inclined to raise. Such an initial reading, which requires but little time, is an introduction that will facilitate a more in-depth study. The Spiritist book, this book contains the complete doctrine as dictated by the spirits themselves. It contains the entire philosophy and all its moral implications. It reveals humankind's destiny and provides an initiation into the understanding of the nature of spirits and the mysteries of life beyond the grave. By reading it, one comprehends that Spiritism has a serious objective and that it's not a frivolous pastime. Number 3, Medium's book. This book is intended to guide those who wish to become involved with the manifestations and provides an understanding of the most appropriate means for communicating with the spirits. It is a guide for both mediums and evokers and supplements the Spirit's book. 4, Revue Spirit. This journal is an assorted collection of phenomenological incidents, theoretical explanations, and separate excerpts, which supplements what is found in the other previously mentioned works, somewhat comprising the practical application. It may be read simultaneously with the others, although it will be more profitable and especially more intelligible if one reads it after having read the Spirit's book. That is the suggested order as far as we are concerned. I'll have a stop here for a moment. You see, we mentioned here at the beginning of our study that Medium's book is specific for the manifestation part of the Spiritism. It is the book that treats mediumship as a whole. But to have a full understanding of this book, we also recommend, as Kardec did, to you all to get acquainted with the other books, because that will give you a better understanding even of what we're talking here on this book. When Kardec suggested the Revue Spirit, it is not easy. We're talking about 13 books. Each of them, I think there's something like 300 pages each, maybe more. I don't remember from the top of my head. But it's a massive collection with lots of information. I personally use those books as a source of research. And if you do have the opportunity, once again, we'd like to reinforce that at least to read the Spirit's book, at least that, right? Because that will give a better support to you all in this journey. However, those who want to understand a science completely out of read everything that has been written about it, or at least about its main principles, and they should not limit their reading to just one author. Let me say something here as well. Kardec is recommending us to get familiar with other authors, other type of books. Nowadays, we have an easy access to the internet. And through internet, we have lots of information. But how do I know which information is safe, which information is correct? There is a lot of good information on the internet, but there's a lot of information that are nonsense as well. So in any scenario where you do not know the origin, or you do not know if this author or this spirit is reliable, I would refrain to Kardec. I would refrain my studies to mediums and spirits that are well known in the Spiritism. I'm not saying not to read others. I read everything. But to base your assumptions, to increase your basis, it's better to go with those that we really know we can trust. There's a lot of things on the internet that are really, really nonsense. So we need to be very careful. And when I hear people mixing a lot of things, a lot of different knowledges with the Spiritism. Spiritism is a Spiritism. Mediumship, according to the Spiritism, is one thing. Mediumship following other guidelines is a different thing. And we see a lot of people mixing a lot of subjects with Spiritism. I think it's positive to acquire knowledge. But if we're talking about Spiritism, we have to refrain to what is Spiritism. They should even read the pros and cons, the critiques as well as the defenses, and learn about the different theories in order to be able to judge by comparison. Even in science, the ordinary science, there is always scientists that defend one theory and other scientists that defend other theory, and both theories are contrary. So it's very complicated to come to a middle ground, if we may say like that. So it is very important to compare everything, to compare informations, to compare what is written in books, what is in an article. We need to compare. How many people we have here today? We have 15 people in this room. We may read or study a subject, and we may decide to publish a book about the subject. We may have 15 different books with different interpretation of the same subject. And it's not because it's in a book, because it was written by someone, that is correct. So we need to be very careful with the source of information we decide to bring on board, because Kardec, he highlighted to us, this work is the work from the spirits. He was just compiling the information. We have other works that are well-known spirits through well-known mediums that also has a weight. And we have other type of works. There are studies performed by people like us. I'm not saying it's not positive to read. I'm not saying it's not positive to study. But I rather stick to what is in Kardec and what is within Sirius Medium and Sirius Spirits. Because, as I said here, we all can write a book with our perceptions, the way we believe. So we need to be very careful with that. In this respect, we neither recommend nor criticize any work because we do not want to influence anyone's ability to form his or her own opinion. And this is very, very important. Is Kardec speaking here only about Spiritist work? It's not clear for me that he's mentioned that it's only about Spiritist work. He's telling us that himself does not criticize any work, because any work even made beyond the Spiritism may be positive for us, may be positive in the future. Perhaps we will even consider a different type of perception, a different type of knowledge. So it is positive to broaden our horizons. It's very positive because, for example, when we are in the mediumship meeting, we will accept only one type of spirit. We will accept only one type of situation, or we are really practicing charity, open our doors to give assistance to those that are in need. Because that is very, I'm assuming if you are studying this book here, eventually we all will have an opportunity to be part of a mediumship meeting, or at least to practice some of the phenomena. So we have to be open to everything. And when I say everything, I'm not saying to weird practices, but I'm saying about open to everything that may come to us, asking for our help. When I say everything, it's more like everyone. So we need to be open, and we need to be sure what is Spiritism, what is not Spiritism, what are Kardec instructions, what are people's instructions, because I always refrain to Kardec, because you will see through our path a lot of rules that when you try to find those rules in Kardec, you will have a very hard time to find. And some of them I never found. So we need to know by ourselves what makes sense, what does not make sense. Not expect that someone will bring what is acceptable to us. We need to keep our freedom of opinion, our freedom of analysis. Kardec did not want to influence anyone's ability to form his or her opinion. So we need to keep that in mind. We need to be eternal students. And within that parameter, we can create, we can develop our knowledge. In addition to our brick to the building, we only fill our own particular niche. It is not our responsibility to be both judge and litigate. And we have no foolish pretense of being the only ones capable of spreading light. I will highlight that here too. Is human believe that we have the salvation? Is human believe that I'm right and everybody else is wrong? This is human. But we need to be very careful with that. Very careful with that. You will hear Spiritism is the future of all religions. Spiritism is this, Spiritism is that. Am I saying that everything else is wrong? Am I saying everything else cannot spread light, as Kardec is writing here? We need to be careful, very careful with those words. One thing that we used to say in the Spiritism that no one can argue is beyond charity, there is no salvation. And that is applicable to everyone, everywhere, because charity can be practiced by everyone, everywhere, in any situation. So that is different. But let's keep in mind that we are not alone. If we follow Jesus' proceedings, that's the way forward. Rather, it is the reader's responsibility to separate good from the bad, the correct from the erroneous. Something that we find very, very, very often is that we don't want to bother to study ourselves. We don't want to spend our time reading books and everything. And we like to go to lectures. We like to go to studies. We would like to get everything ready for us. It does not remove the responsibility of the individual to know what is good, what is bad, what is right, what is wrong. Why I think this is important? Let's assume here that I decide to write a book. In my book, I made a lot of assertive phrases about what I believe, based in my experience, based in my studies, based in my, what can I say? Based in my evaluation of what I was able to understand. So then you all will buy my book. Then you all will start to defend, or at least to believe in what I wrote. What about if I'm totally wrong? I'm not only not understand perfectly what is there for myself, but I'm also misguiding 17 people that are here today, 70 people that bought my book, for example. So it is our obligation to analyze everything, to make questions, to evaluate what is written on the book, on the internet, anywhere. Because at the end of the day, we may be guided by blind people too, right? So we need to be very careful with the information we accept as correct. So that's why I say, and I will always say, referring to Kardec, we have examples in the Spiritism that even spirits like Emmanuel said to Francisco Cândido Xavier, if you see anything that I may produce that's contrary to what is written by Kardec, ignore what I did, stay with Kardec. So he is by far our best reference. Hi, Munir.
Hi, Guilherme. Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Guilherme, I just want to call the attention to 2 points. First, when Kardec says reads, he means serious reading, study the work. Instead of using the word study, I mean, it's something that we should read and analyze and think about and everything else. And to say that, oh, do you know Spiritism? Oh, yes, I've read part of the Spirit's book. I know what it is. No, you don't. And also, when Kardec published the Medium's book, you know, it was the second book. So after that, after this, saying, you know, putting these books for us to read in this order, suggesting. Nowadays, we have, you know, the Gospel, we have Heaven and Hell, Genesis, all these books that came after this. So to me, personal opinion is, to know Spiritism, we should at least read these 6 books, this introduction, plus the 5 that are the ones that, you know, talk about Spiritism and the spiritual phenomena as such. And then we would be able to appreciate other works as well. We should be honest with ourselves. We should read and study and then analyze this one. If we think we know Spiritism because we've read one book, and then we know this other doctrine or whatever because we've read one of their books and everything. So in the end, we're just making, an assortment of things, and we won't be able actually to keep a proper, idea of what the spirit world and what Kardec or anyone is saying in depth. So to me, it's important to read all the books, read in the sense of studying the books, and then we can read anything, and then we'll be able to analyze. And of course, this last sentence here, the reader's responsibility to separate what is good and what is not. We have to be prepared to do that. And we can only be prepared by doing this proper study of Kardec's works and other works, if we are interested to be able to compare, to analyze, to see what is common, to see what disagree between one and the other.
And it is not a one-time study. It is studying through the existence. Because even if you study properly the first time, when you do that for the second time, you will find things you could not find on the first time. That's a fact. That is a fact. Every time I'm reading some of the books I read before, we find something that we could not find before. How is it possible? Because you are deepening your knowledge. You are acquiring knowledge from different points. And now when you see that test again, you have other possibilities to understand things that you could not even see before. That's why we say on the Spiritism, serious Spiritists, they study continuously. Mediums, indoctrinators, Spiritists as a whole, they should study continuously. There's no other way. Or we are happy enough to be, let me use a word, average Spiritists, where we know a little, but that's what we know. I believe I'm familiar with. I know. But if you do some series of questions, chances are that you'll be well. We can talk about that later, because we only are able to be serious Spiritists, as we've been told in the beginning. Love one another. Educate yourself. Hi, Denise.
What about to me, Guilherme? I think that this applies to everything in life. Whatever you want to study, you have to continuously study. To never, it's an evolution. You never stop studying. So I think that just highlights how Spiritism brings you that you cannot read a bit, say, I know all, because it's forever learning in every single subject you do in your life. It applies for everything, not just spirit, not just religion or this doctrine. Mm-hmm. So I think just like adds at the point how important it is to keep reading and learning.
Yeah, you're totally right. And if we don't do that, how we will be acquainted to new information, to new possibilities? Would you prefer to be treated by a doctor that is just did his university and never open a book after that? Or would you prefer to be treated by a doctor that he's constantly going to places to study, he's constantly following up how technology is evolving, how the medicine is evolving? I prefer the second one for sure, but I can guarantee that you may find both options. So it's up to you to decide which one you want to be, right? Yeah, you're totally right, Denise.
May I say something?
Yeah, sure.
We comment a lot around reading books over time. I think there is a say. I don't know exactly where it's coming from, but the life is an open book as well. And as Denise said as well, just complementing, is we, through the course of life, we gonna have different experiences, and these may bring the knowledge to us to reflect upon what is happening, and that definitely is something very rich to reflect and to go back, as you say, to go back to read again with other eyes, or even keep thinking around some of the stuff that really, at least for me, makes sense. Life is a good teacher as well, with the philosophy and some learning together at the same time. Often it helps, it kind of helps to guide the knowledge as well.
Very good, Daniel. And talking about mediumship, sometimes only after we've been exposed to some phenomena, we are able to better understand what is in the book. Because we know what is there, we think we understood, but only after we witness or we practice it. Oh, that's what he's talking about. And then when you come back to the book, you have a different pair of eyes. So that's very important. Yep. Appreciate that. Thank you. So we move on now, moving into the chapter 4, theories. When this strange phenomena of spiritism began to occur, or rather, when they began to recur in these later days, they engendered more doubt than anything as to their reality, and even more as to their cause. This sentence is still valid. Still valid. Right? When they were verified by irrefutable testimony and by experiments that anyone could conduct, let me highlight it here. The results was that everyone had their own way of interpreting them according to their own personal ideas, beliefs, and prejudices. Hence, numerous theories began to appear, which careful observation would reduce their real worth. Two things in that part here. Anyone may conduct experiments. But how can I conduct experiments if I know nothing? There are risks. Anyone may conduct experiments if has the minimum level of information, of knowledge, if you have studied the minimum, if you have been carefully studying this book, for example, then you have everything you need to start your experiments. Things may go wrong, yes, as everything in life. When we start, things may go south. But it's not because something went wrong once that will not validate the possibility for the future. The other thing that I'm thinking here is careful observation. Everything we do in life is supposed to observe the results of what we do. We should even observe things before we engage ourselves in the activity. Because there's a lot of things that does not work at all, like he's saying here. But there are things that are really serious and worth our commitment. I'm saying that for two reasons. How many spiritists are wasting the opportunity to engage themselves in the mediumship meeting, even to consider to open a mediumship meeting, because I don't want to be committed, because I don't think I'm capable of, because I'm afraid, I have fear, because many reasons. You'll find a lot of excuses not to do things. With the amount of spiritist centers, let's talk about Europe, UK and Europe. We should have at least one mediumship meeting per center. That should be a goal, there should be a target for every spiritist center. Otherwise, it's not a spiritist center, it's a study group. Sorry to be blunt, but that's the way I see it. And when we are pushing to have spiritist meetings, mediumship meetings on every spiritist center, it's because that's a way to do charity. There are lots of spirits needing our help. And if we do have the exposure to the doctrine, if we have studied medium's book, spiritist book, why not? Why not? It's very common to be in a comfort zone, expecting someone to do something. But we can do ourselves. We should do ourselves. We should multiply those possibilities. I don't know you all. I don't know if you are linked to any spiritist center or not, if you have the means to do a mediumship meeting or not. But this is something that I truly believe we all should consider.
Gabby, can I speak?
Sure.
At the same time when Kardec and later Kardec was organizing this, Madame Blavatsky, the theosophy came and was, of course, influenced a lot of in other followers of Spiritism. Even nowadays, we have this theory strongly working in society, a lot of believers. There's also a lot of things good in this other theory, but there was more influence from the West, well, no, the East, India, other places there. And Spiritism is the one that really clarifies everything and brings to us all the observations and results and manifestations that we could really follow in a different way. Thank you.
Munir?
Oh, hi, Glenn. I just want to make a comment about this, what Kardec says there, experiments that anyone could conduct. Just to remind us that when he's talking about these experiments, at that time, the mediumistic manifestation was more on a physical level, turning tables, and they were happening everywhere. People were using that for fun, And nowadays, I think the spiritual phenomena, it's more, or mediumship is more on a psychic level. And that's why nowadays, to me, I would add to this, anyone could conduct, but not everyone should. I would add that because I think the manifestations nowadays, they are more on a psychic level. And on a psychic level, we need to do things properly. Whereas at that time, he said, that was common at these later days. I think he was talking about that type of material phenomena that was taking place with the turning tables and so on everywhere. So I think what he wanted to say was that, well, anyone could, a group could get together and do that sort of thing. But nowadays, I think, we should be more careful because, as I said, mediumship, I see that taking place on a more psychic level than material one.
So, Munir, just to develop a little bit more your thought, why not everyone should?
exactly, because it's psychic. We have to be prepared when we are talking about something that has a greater impact on us. So we should know exactly what to do. It's like watching a movie. If you go watch a movie, go to the cinema, you can watch all sorts of films, but some of them are very strong, and you have that piece of advice, strong scenes, or preparing yourself for the impact that you can have. So if we are not prepared to watch that type of film, we should rather, not watch it. That's why I see not everyone shoots, although anyone could, not everyone shoots.
And how can we get prepared to do it?
Yeah, and studying and practicing with guidance. It's important not to just to spend a whole life studying and then, okay, I'm ready now. And then you go to the spirit world and then you work on the other side, perhaps, as a communicating spirit, not the receiving medium,
Mhm.
But it's important to study and to practice with guidance in a serious way.
Very good, very good. Spiritism adversaries soon saw these differing opinions a counter-argument, alleging that Spiritism themselves were unable to agree with one another. It was a very precarious reason, however, when one considers the fact that the first few steps of the developing science are necessarily uncertain until times enable the gathering and coordinating of the facts into a set opinion. As a fact become complete and better observed, premature ideas are set aside and unity of opinions is finally established, at least concerning the fundamental points, if not as to all the details. Such was also the case with Spiritism, which was unable to escape this common law and which, due to its very nature, gave rise even more to a diversity of interpretations. Nevertheless, we can state that in this sense, its advance has been much more rapid than that of older sciences. Medicine, for example, which still continues to divide the best scholar. He's using a comparison with medicine. At that time, they had people defending one thing, other people defending other things. Even nowadays, it's still the same. We saw that with COVID, how many scientists was defending A theory, so many scientists were defending B theory. On the Spiritism is the same. On the Spiritism is the same. Things I believe may not sound reasonable to everyone. Some one thing may not sound reasonable to me. And I think that's positive, because when we compare two different theories, it will bring to us material to allow ourselves to come to a conclusion. And that's through the study and that comparison, we can all learn from it. To methodically follow a progressive order of ideas, it might be useful to investigate first the so-called negative theories, i.e., those proposed by adversaries of Spiritism. We have already, well, at that time, yeah. Nowadays, I personally wouldn't bother. I would not waste energy with something like that. Even in the Spiritism, inside the Spiritism, when someone comes with something that I don't think is positive, I personally don't waste my time with that. There's a lot of controversial topics in the Spiritism, if I can say like that, And when I see something like that, I don't pay enough attention. I rather use my time to study even more and to work even more. We have already refuted such objections, both in the introduction and conclusion of the Spirit's book, as well as the shorter work entitled What is the Spiritism? What is the Spiritism? Thus, it would not be worthwhile to return to the subject in full here, and we will limit ourselves to summarize in a few words the reason upon which the objections are based. That's a good example to see how those books are all interconnected. And quite often we have to move from one to another to be able to fully understand what is there. There are two types of spirit phenomena, those involving physical effects and those involving intelligent effects. Since they do not believe in the existence of spirits, they do not believe in anything apart from matter. It is understandable that these adversaries of Spiritism would also deny the intelligent effects. As for the physical effects, they comment on them from their own point of view, and their arguments can be summed up in the four following theories. '38. The charlatanism theory. Among the antagonists, many attribute the physical effect to fraud due to the fact that some of them may be imitated. The supposition would turn all spiritists into dupes and all mediums into charlatans, without even considering these individuals' status, character, wisdom, and honorability. If it deserves any kind of response at all, we would counter that some of the phenomena of physics have also been imitated by stage magicians, which proves nothing against the real science. Moreover, there are persons whose character dismisses any suspicion of fraud, and one would have to be completely lacking in good manners and civility to dare to tell them to their face that they are accomplices in charlatanism. Well, let's go on, and then in the end we make some comments. In one very respectable meeting place, a gentleman who regarded himself as well-mannered made an observation in such a kind, and hostess said, "Sir, if you are not satisfied, you can get your money back at the door." And she pointed to the door, implying what would be the best for him to do. Should we affirm that there have never been abuses? If so, we would have to believe that humans are perfect. Instead, they abuse everything, even what is most sanctified. Then, why would some not abuse Spiritism? But the fact that something can be used wrongly is no reason for one to prejudge it unfavorably. We can determine the good faith of others by motives behind their actions. Where there is no profit to be made, there is no motive of charlatanism. Well, as I was reading, something came to my mind, and it is in the last sentence. If there is any financial, or even more, if there's any gain related to Spiritism, I would recommend to be very careful. Mediumship, especially, very, very, very careful. Because then people start to have other reasons to practice the mediumship. Sometimes money is not the main reason. Sometimes that person wants to be on the spotlight because being on the spotlight brings a kind of sense of power, a sense of respect. Even when there isn't any spirit beside him or her, they still say, yes, the spirit is here saying this, this, and this, because I have to produce something to please my audience. So we need to be very careful in what we do with our mediumship and who we believe, who we rely within their mediumship. When he was saying here, well, if you're not satisfied, get your money and get out. I wouldn't be in a place like that to start with. I will not pay for mediumship ever. Because if I have to, there's something wrong. In my eyes, I know there are different understanding around the world, but this is not spiritism. I would not recur to a medium outside spiritism. I never did. Perhaps one day I will, for some reason, but until today I never did. So to me, it sounds very non-starter, at least. Perhaps in the future I will, as I said. We never know the future, but probably not. The madness theory. Out of condescension, some dismiss any suspicion of fraud and assert that those who are not fooled by others are nonetheless victims of self-deception, which is equivalent to calling them imbeciles. But when disbelievers are less tactful, they frankly state that it is a simple case of madness, unceremoniously attributing to themselves the sole privilege of sanity. Well, from time to time, I used to joke in a mediumship meeting, and do you all believe by now that we are having contact with the spirits? We are allowing them to write, to talk? Because if we are not, everyone on the mediumship meeting here is not very well in his mind, his or her mind. We are more like in cuckoo land than anything else. So basically, a lot of people think mediumship is a state of madness. But state of madness cannot produce intelligent phenomena. If you go to a sanatorium, you will see how they are over there. So if you are producing intelligent phenomena, we cannot be mad. This is the main argument of those who can come up with no better reason. Moreover, this form of criticism is proven foolish by its own frivolousness, and it does not deserve the time that would be wasted in refuting it. Besides, spiritists are hardly affected by it. Oh, there's another thing too, talking about madness. A lot of people think that people that get involved with spirits, mediumship, they will get mad. You may hear that. They courageously follow the path, consoled by the thought that they have many people on constatable merit as their companions of misfortune. In fact, one would have to admit that this madness, if it may be regarded as such, display a peculiar characteristic. It seems to show a preference for reaching the most enlightened class of individuals, whom Spiritism presently count as being by far the majority of its adherents. Let me stop here first. I heard that a lot until today. The Spiritists are people that have more education, more formal education. They have, I particularly don't like to say that. Spiritism, as any other creed, have all sorts of people. must be open to all sort of people, and is open to those that have more formal education to lower their level of the way they talk, to make people with less formal education to fully understand what the Spiritism means. So I understand that at the time of Kardec, a lot of professors, doctors, people with good position in society, they were attracted by the Spiritism. But myself personally don't like to give a lot of emphasis on this one. I prefer to believe that Spiritism, as a philosophy of life, is there to everyone, to those that have PhD and to those that don't know how to write and to read. Because sometimes those that do not know how to write and to read, they are better people than I am. They know more Spiritism than I am. They practice more Spiritism than I do. So I prefer to look in a different way. If among them there are a few eccentrics, they pose no more of a threat against Spiritism than do religious fanatics against religion, melomaniacs against music, or mathematical maniacs against mathematics. All systems have their fanatics, and one would have to be very obtuse to confuse the exaggeration of a system with the system itself. For a broader treatment of the issue, I would refer to the reader to the booklet, What is Spiritism? Or the Spiritist book, section 15 of the introduction. Once again, reminding us to study other books, right? All interconnected. The hallucination theory. Guys, I will not start this topic because of the time. So I will mark here for the next week. So I would like to ask you, what do you think about what Kardec is saying here about the abuse or people that overreact based on what they believe, exaggeration of the system? Do you believe that it may happen on the Spiritism? Do you believe it may happen with people involved with mediumship meeting? What is your take?
I believe that's everywhere. There will be spiritist fanatics. Every single religion has their fanatics. And I think if you look back in history, it has proved. You know, I mean, there's the Muslim, the Catholicism, the Protestant. There was a fanatics that interpret in their way and act on that in their interpretation, what they believe is right, and take a level up. And not just in religion, I think in every single, how can I say it? I think everywhere there's fanatics.
We have lots of people that they come from a different creed to the Spiritism. They start to be acquainted with the Spiritism, and then they bring with them some of the characteristics from a different creed into Spiritism. That's very normal, it's human, right? So that's why it's very important to everyone to analyze everything. Study and to analyze everything. Because sometimes you will see people arguing and defending points of view in a way that's not positive for themselves, not positive to the other person involved in that argument, but most of all, not positive for the Spiritism. I believe that regardless, some of the words in Spiritism are very complicated to understand. When we do get familiar with, it's very simple to understand. Sometimes we try to make things more complicated, because we like to use nice words. We like to use complicated words. We try even to give different meanings of what is simple because we felt better ourselves doing so. We felt more important doing things like that. But Spiritism is very simple. Spiritism is to everyone. Spiritism, if we really understanding the meaning of what is there, is simple. It's very simple. Even the Medium's book is simple. The first time we read, yes, it's a bit complicated. But if you follow what Kardec said, what is Spiritism? Spirit's book, and then we come back to the Medium's book, we'll see things a bit more flexible. We'll see things easier to understand. So every time you see someone,
If I can say some,
sure,
I think whatever label or theory you want to actually call something, as Allan Kardec is going through explaining to us, in all walks of life, not just Spiritism, it all comes down to ignorance. It's not having the right knowledge of the facts in practically every case. So that's why, you know, people can't be on the same page. They can't sing off the same hymn sheet because their view is not identical.
yeah, indeed, indeed. And taking that on board, even today, we see so many radicals on everything, isn't it? So many people.
Interpreting things differently.
Yeah. Yeah. And radicals are those that, in my opinion, haven't spent enough time to fully understand the meaning, the deeper meaning of the message. Message from higher spirits, from different creeds. There's still high spirits bringing message of peace, of love, but sometimes we misunderstand the message. Well, I think that's it for us today. That was very good to be with you here. And you were very quiet today, so that was not what I was expecting. I was expecting you guys to talk a bit more. But I'm looking forward to be with you guys again next week. And I wish you all a wonderful weekend.
Absolutely. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
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 Okay, bye.